welcome back to Green Rapids.
Welcome back.
Today's topic is about consumerism. Consumerism is something that has like multiple levels of impacts, like on our environment, but it also affects our society too. I will dive less deeply into the societal aspects of it, but I will touch on the environmental part a little bit. I'm gonna start off with some of like the history and kind of go from there. So I will be the gloomy, just cloudy thunderstorm of sadness that comes with talking about some of these heavy topics, and then Erica's gonna follow right up with some luscious sunshine.
Yep, this is right on theme with who we were born to be.
Agreed. So just as I like to do, I'll start with a definition. The Oxford Languages Dictionary offers us two definitions. The first is the protection or promotion of the interests of consumers. But that's not really my experience with the word consumerism or with consumerism as a concept. Mm-hmm. And the second definition, which does come with a little warning that says often derogatory, is the preoccupation of society with the acquisition of consumer goods. Basically, an assumption with buying stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's stuff that we desire but don't need. And like I say, I'm guilty of that because I desire being the coolest punk kid on the block.
It comes with so many accessories.
But do I need to do that?
If you want to be punk, you better be ready to have like chains and earrings and jewelry.
Okay, but see, that's like a movement that was commodified because it used to be so DIY. Like you were fake punk if you did not DIY your shizzle.
You have to. Now you got Hot Topic.
Anyways.
Oh my God, this is so good. But I guess it's like tying in exactly what we're talking about, right? Like Hot Topic is cheaper stuff. Mm-hmm. It's in a mall, which is like surrounded by places for you to just buy. Totally.
Like the whole point of being punk is being like kind of like a F the big man individual. And now we're like giving into the corporate idea of punk, which is just buying punk stuff.
Well, you're giving into what the idea of like following society, and society currently is just buying stuff all the time.
Like, hey, this is a version of yourself that you want to be, and I'm like, oh, it kind of is. So
call yourself out. Let's hear it.
I told you I was going to be really honest with this one.
I love it.
So I'll start off with some of the history. In human history, scarcity was kind of the norm, right? Like as humans were starting to figure out how to live in society and live together and live in communities, every bit of food and clothing and water and shelter increased our chances of survival. So it's kind of instinctual to want to acquire a certain amount of material just to ensure future survival. That's part of the frontal lobe function, is to like think about the future and try to solve those issues of the future.
Frontal lobe is referring to what helps you make your decisions, and so that's
it's part of your
processes.
Brain.
This is your brain. So
the
this
part
is
right
like,
behind your forehead.
If you know where your third eye is, or you're just above your eyebrows and right in the middle, that is your frontal lobe, and that develops until you're about like 30 almost. So like being surrounded by consumerism until you're our age is totally going to impact.
Yeah, it's going to impact how your frontal lobe develops and then how you make those decisions. So in the past, the frontal lobe cortex was really focused on survival and the future. So a lot of our instinct revolved around just trying to do everything possible to increase our chances of making it, you know? So as technological advances were made, little by little over like thousands of years, and life got a little bit easier, the instinct to acquire more and more could have faded away, but it didn't. Because as these technological advances were developed, only a certain few were actually benefiting from it. So that created like a really huge disparity between the ruling class and the working class.
So we're talking about like this mindset comes from scarcity, like true scarcity. And then people start to like want to collect things and start to like make sure that it brings them safety. And then that mindset never leaves. And now it's creeping into our homes with like advertisements and the need to have everything. Is that right? Or okay.
Yeah. So that's like the basically just like huge macro look at it.
Okay. That was my elementary version of am I getting this right?
Getting it. So as the ruling class became wealthy and the poor became poorer, Religion was weaponized, and the poor were told to dismiss materialism and embrace spirituality, and basically, rejecting all kind of like material wealth or luxury. But they did that with the promise of heavenly wealth in the next life. So even though they were kind of kept away from a lot of the accessories that made life more easy for a certain group of people, wealth was not unimportant to them, right? Like they still cared about wealth, but they were just promised this wealth in the next life. And that's kind of what kept the classes separate for so long too.
So the idea was you're going to work hard enough to be able to get out of your situation. In the meantime, be okay with what's going on.
Yeah, it's like this is your lot in life.
Right. It's the idea that like everybody has their place. And that became a pride thing. People started becoming like taking pride in being in those classes.
Yes. Yeah, because they were like, oh, like I'm just going to be so much richer when I get to heaven.
When was that mindset formed? Like, is there a certain time period where that became more?
It depended a little bit on the different countries, because different countries kind of moved at different paces. So in the 17th century, we actually, like, as travel increased and like the world began to shrink a little bit, that led to new trade routes. And then the trade routes needed to be manned by like traders and merchants. And those traders and merchants became the new middle class. Before this, there was no middle class, right? So all the purchasing power was held by the ruling class and like the uber wealthy only. The poor couldn't buy shizzle. If anything, they really just like made things work with whatever they had, whatever they found. But this new middle class meant that suddenly there was a whole new group of people with new buying power. And a lot of that wealth, a lot of what they purchased was like aspirational because they wanted to be rich, right? It gave them something to aspire for. So that was one of the motivators behind like that level of consumerism.
Well, and isn't that the same for us now? Like a lot of us not only want to be wealthy because we want that security, but we also feel like having the things we want and need are going to
magically dissolve our problems, make us happier, etc.
Make us feel that security that we're really looking for. I mean, and it can, like, let me be real. When you are struggling or you are really poor and it's hard, money can help with those things.
Yes.
And money has become so necessary, but...
Yeah, money does make you happier to a point. So shortly after the trade routes and stuff, we experienced the super famous Industrial Revolution, which peaked during 1760 and 1840. The Industrial Revolution really, really changed how things were made, right? Before this, everything was either like handmade or made in like small batches. Like, if you're rich and you wanted a dress, you would go to a dressmaker who would make it for you. And if you were not rich, you would make your own dress.
Right.
So like there was like a certain level of work that went into acquiring new goods. And there was obviously like a cost associated with that.
There was also a cost of like not treating your goods well.
Yes. And back then, because goods were so precious, because they took so long to make or acquire, because like even if you were super rich and could afford all the dresses, they still took so long to make that it wasn't like that instant gratification that we're used to now,
Yeah.
So the Industrial Revolution led to the like mass production of a lot of goods that were prior to this like either took too long to make or were kind of expensive. So it dropped prices so that they were like affordable to people, including this new middle class. And then the Industrial Revolution and the mass production of items led to the creation of department stores, a la Meijer and Target, etc. And
stop bringing Target into this.
It's my weakness.
I know.
I like love/hate Target.
If
you see me at Target, please don't judge me. Look away. Pretend you don't see me.
There's so many other things they do to offset, I swear.
Anyway. This hurts.
Consumer in me.
The consumer in me loves Target. It's sucky. So department stores kind of made shopping an acceptable pastime. And that was one of the big cultural shifts that happened during that time too. However, like at the time, things were still being advertised for their purpose, right? So somebody was like, hey, there's this typewriter. They were like, this typewriter has like these like technical specs. And this is like what it's made of. However, big businesses realized that they could use psychological warfare to increase profits.
Upgrades.
A quote from a documentary I watched called Consumerism on YouTube says, if you understand what motivates people, you could influence them without them realizing it. And that's actually really what happened. One of the big players in this move was a guy by the name of Edward Bernays, who wrote Propaganda. And there was really him who worked with a lot of big businesses to move American culture from a needs-based to a desire-based culture. And we learned that the ads all have one message, which is it's better to buy than not to buy, and you will be happier for it.
So will you define, just for people who are like trying to figure out like the difference, what it would be like needs-based versus desire-based?
Okay, so I have a dog named Umi that I love a lot. And her needs are just care, love, food, and water. But you know what else she gets? She gets treats. She gets stupid little dog hats. She gets
dog coats.
She gets coats, and one might be
sweatshirts.
A need, right, for the cold. But some of them are purely accessories. They are not a need at all. They're purely because I'm like, oh, this gives my dog style. This lets me project my version of myself onto my animal who has really just a dog personality. So that's I guess one example.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then even with myself, I have all the basic things that I need, right? Like food, water, shelter. But there's things that I want. Like, for example, I would like to have those Vans that I saw at the store the other day that have the lightning bolt on them, because I'm like, wow, those look so cool. And I'm like, I want to look cool.
Well, also, they might make you faster if they have the lightning bolt on them.
I don't know if that's been scientifically proven, but I'll put it to the test.
I think we should go check it out.
I'll go check it out.
No, but what if, there is somewhat of a need to, look professional?
Yes.
To show up a certain way. Mm-hmm. Maybe not to keep up with a societal norm in one way or another, but there might be times and places in our lives where it strictly calls for us to be a consumer. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to kind of separate from those sometimes. And so I guess I was wondering what the need and want is, but I think we also know when we're going with excess.
Yeah.
And when we're staying on the side of, okay, I don't really need to purchase this in this moment.
Yeah, I would say a need would be say I work 5 days a week, and when I used to work at a retail kind of store where I had to kind of look professional, I did wear dress pants almost every day. Having 5 dress pants, maybe less, I would say would be a need, but having 10,
yeah, right,
that's a want,
Especially when you have a washer and dryer in your home.
Yeah, and I have 7 pairs, so I'm right in the middle.
No, you're in the middle. We have options. I just wanted to be sure and clarify, because sometimes it's hard for people to know mm-hmm. where their desires lie and then what's going to be necessity. Mm-hmm. And it is fair to say well, I do have a place where I have to show up and be professional mm-hmm. and so yeah, how we draw a line might be the difference in how much of a consumer we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, one of the things that we could talk about thrifting later. Okay.
Oh, we can talk about thrifting whenever you want.
So in the 1920s, because of this overproduction and, just the Industrial Revolution and everything was just kind of coming to a head. But big businesses hit a dilemma, which is overproduction. So since between 1860 to 1920, population had only tripled, but production had increased by more than tenfold.
Of course.
So we just had an excess of products.
Wow.
So a lot of the big players in the business world got together. They were like, hey, a great solution might be to have a shorter work week and higher pay. That way we could just produce the items that are needed, and then, people would be happier. They would probably have a higher quality of life because they have a longer weekend, However, this was rejected because other big businesses thought that it could radicalize the society if they had enough time to think, and maybe they wouldn't consume as much. So they're like, that might ruin our profits. And part of why they came to this thinking is that corporations are required by law to maximize profits for their shareholders, regardless of social or environmental impact. In short, profit over people. Production was no longer a way to satisfy needs, but rather a means to an end, which was maximizing profits. Dun, dun, dun.
And Media plays a large role in this, right? So, like, this is
Huge.
the age where people are sitting around their radios,
Oh
getting
yeah,
all of their
TVs and
information.
radios were coming into play at this
Radio
point.
and TV
Mass
start coming
communication.
in, mass communication, and those are all like controlled spaces where people are getting that. So then advertising became huge, and like we even know today, like you can't listen to a song or watch something on your phone without advertisement. You can't
Yep.
go on a website without having ads all over the place.
Yep.
And they're contributing to the subconscious of like a rate of what we see and what we feel like we need.
Yeah.
And like blurring those lines, right?
Yep. So, that was, and then one of the things that they used other than psychology and stuff was also planned obsolescence.
What is it?
It is when products are no longer made to last, but rather they're made to be replaced so you can buy more and more and more and more.
Yeah.
Example, I love iPhones, but iPhones,
Yeah.
they don't last as long as they used to. I mean, I have an iPhone 8 and I've had it and she's running strong since 2016. And I do kind of feel like I need to upgrade because I'm like, oh, the camera kind of sucks.
She isn't running.
I'm living in the past.
She is not running. I think it's running how it needs to, but I don't know if it's high functioning.
You're right. It's functioning though.
It's functioning, but your phone is not high functioning.
But part of me is like,
okay.
if I get another new iPhone, is it gonna last as long as my iPhone 8?
Well, we had this discussion the other day.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a newer phone, and it's because I did need to get a newer phone.
Yeah,
like
mine you're straight up like busted or something, right?
Mine was just like shitting on me. But the reality is I drop my phone so often, and that contributes 100%. And like I need to be more mindful of where it comes from, how much I paid for it.
Yeah,
I would never drop my laptop the way that I drop my phone, and I think it's definitely the way we treat things. It's definitely the way we see things, how we use them.
Yeah, we treat things as disposable a lot of times.
We do. Well, and we know we can get another one tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, everything's just like available there, right? Because it's just out there. But yeah, basically, planned obsolescence just created a culture of using and discarding, and then it just became like a norm to like not use things until they wore out, but rather just replace them sooner than later, and like just like really nurture that desire to just always like buy, 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 buy,
Bye, bye, bye.
Bye, bye.
Bye,
bye. In the 1960s, hippies became very like anti-capitalistic, and millions of them dropped out of capitalistic society, which could have been the start of something really positive and beautiful and more impacting. And I mean, they did definitely have an impact on society, but what crushed it was like the following. Well, I'll get to it. But in the 1970s is...
Oh my goodness, you're going to crush things.
In the 1970s was the first time that environmental scientists were raising the alarm about the effects of all this extra consumerism and pollution and everything else on the planet. And that, again, that could have been the start of something long and beautiful and more impactful. But it was crushed in the 1980s when governments decided that, you know what, greed is good. Successful people are people that make more money. Successful companies are ones that put profits over people, and like basically just like cutting the bottom line as low as it can to get as much profit as possible. And that led to a lot of things like factory fires from workers just being in these like incredibly inhumane and unhealthy situations and environments. So lots of people have died for a lot of cheap clothing.
A lot of people to this day still do get injured.
Yes.
And I don't know the rate at which people live or lose lives, but like
they don't look at the numbers.
It's a brutal workforce and process. Like it's not cute how we're getting clothes by any means. People are not happy. It's unhealthy to be in these work conditions physically, mentally, emotionally. And then you're also getting underpaid, which means you're not going to be able to get yourself out of this position, right?
Yeah. And then, as we know, like there's a lot of environmental impacts to that. Part of it is the fact that there are more pollutant emissions. So because there's so many more plants needed to run all these factories and this like desire for cars and transportation and all that stuff, that obviously creates like a really huge strain on our energy systems. There's increased land use in terms of like agriculture, and a lot of crops that are basically grown for like, for example, like palm oil is one that's really contributing to like deforestation, and it's like in everything that it really doesn't need to be in, but it just happens to be really cheap.
What are types of things that palm oil's in? Just like a quick list.
It could be in body and hair products. It could be in Nutella. It could be in peanut butter. It could be in a lot of meat-based products. It could be used as like a binder or something like that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A lot of processed sweets. So and then also like all these things are contributing to an accelerated climate change effect. And that's on top of the pollution of the things being produced themselves.
Right. And so I'm thinking we can even just break one thing down specifically, like clothes. Think about the process that one shirt does go through from, one stage to another. So it's either going to be out of like cotton, which means space to grow this cotton, or it's going to be made out of plastics, which is what is it? What's the word?
Polyester?
Polyester, thank you. I don't know why that left my brain. Polyester equals plastic, right?
Yeah, it's a petroleum product too. So it's also further contributing to the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, so if you have a polyester shirt, it's made out of plastic. It's ran in a factory that's emitting fumes into the air. It's also running off of high amounts of energy, and it's coming from China. And then that gets shipped over to the U.S. inefficiently. And then we purchase them either online or in stores, and they get shipped to our homes, or we drive to our stores to get them. And then you wear them a couple of times and you throw them away, and they go back into landfills into those same countries, or they just go into the trash in our own landfills.
Right.
That's typically the process that's happening with these fast fashion products.
Absolutely.
And so there is no way at getting out of the cycle of waste.
Right.
I mean,
we're just creating mountains of waste.
Right.
If you want to learn a little bit more about fast fashion and ways that you can help, or just like if you just want to learn about how it's affecting the world in terms of like society and the environment, you can go to fashionrevolution.org. They are a group that are looking to become the world's largest fashion activism movement. And they're trying to just like do things like change consumer culture, and also like holding producers and companies and brands accountable through research, education, and advocacy. And I just read that off of their About page. So feel free to check them out if you want to learn more about fast fashion.
Yeah. And are there any other products that you can think of offhand besides, like, we have phones, clothes? Yeah, technology. So like getting a new upgrade on a TV, like that's not going to be necessary, right? Or maybe like getting a new vibe in your space because you want to like go with the season, or go with a time, or buying new Christmas decorations every year. Like that can be a form of consumerism, right?
Yeah.
So depending on where your weaknesses are, it might be a good idea to just address those spaces.
Yeah, like my weakness is like
the dog
unnecessary dog accessories. Why do I do that?
No, that's your love language to your dogs.
Yeah. And then, I mean, and also like gift giving is one of my love languages. So I'm like, how can I be more ethical and intentional about that?
Yeah.
You know? So that's my bit. That is Consumerism History 101.
Boom.
Now, solutions.
Solutions.
It's not all doom and gloom, unfortunately.
Well, I think it's also safe to say that like we have kind of tripped and fell into this lifestyle and this understanding. Like, no one told me that when I wanted a phone when I was 14 years old so I could text my friends, that it was going to relate to me having my phone in my pocket as my computer almost 24/7. Like nobody told me that.
They don't warn you.
No, and it kind of seemed like a cool idea at the time even, right?
But remember the sidekicks?
It was just so cool. Like they were so desirable, right?
And like all the hot girls in my school had a sidekick, so I was like, I want to be a hot girl.
The coolest people had sidekicks, and not even
flip.
They had Blackberries. I mean, all of it, you know. So like it was very desirable to have these things, to upgrade them. We were kids when we were in the middle of like getting into all of that. I mean, like we all think about the we all know the advertisements for cereal, you know, and the like, you need these action figures and you need this additional
That's
thing.
the power of brand language.
I wanted the Barbie dream boat and the Jeep and all the accessories for her and Ken and his friends and just all of it.
Can I throw you one more definition?
Dude, whatever you want.
Branding is the art of building a connection between consumers and a company.
Which is just exactly what I was
exactly
what I was
exactly
explaining.
what made me think of
I
it.
wanted Barbie everything, and I didn't want it to be not Barbie. And you could tell if it wasn't Barbie brand.
And why? Because establishing a brand that customers trust creates expectations of the quality of the brand, which makes you feel more unique or special for being one of those people that, you know, are a customer of that brand.
Totally.
And
me wearing my Doc Martens right now. You talking about your Vans. I mean, it's the
Vans,
same.
I mean, even
thing.
the Vans I'm wearing right now have a cool little patch.
I will give myself a shout out. I've had these boots for 3 years.
Nice.
They have seen some stuff, which I'll actually talk about right now.
Okay.
So, the solution, and this is a self solution.
Yeah.
But I also,
and one of many solutions, right? This is more like an individual activism solution.
Well, and I was just going to say, I think it also, like, our individual action is going to lead to hopefully impacting corporations down the line, because
vote with your dollars.
The reality is when you vote for your dollars, if you do not support people's pockets, they can't function in the same way. They just won't. I continue to say this. I know, like, I'll be real. I'm going to go to a music festival in a couple of weeks, and I want walkie-talkies. I cannot find affordable walkie-talkies in packs anywhere. I'm going to get them off Amazon. They're going to be delivered to my house in a time that I need to, and I need to get a certain amount, right? And I want them to be affordable.
To be fair, though, how many times have you ordered from Amazon this year?
I don't order from Amazon. I don't do it. And as we talk about these things, so, right, like, that feels like a want and a need for me. But then it also is like, we don't have to have everything be a want and need. And so I think it's not necessarily about not wanting things. It's about deciding which desires are worth giving into.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the ways that I've learned this, it was actually when I got into the rabbit hole, right? Picture this. It's April of 2020.
Yeah, I was like, set the scene for us.
We've been quite literally locked in our homes for weeks, right? And I'm in this rabbit hole. I just have this, like, opportunity to
start over, really.
Start over. That's such a good way of putting it. Just, like, not really have the same concerns that I've had for a chunk of time. And I'm just sitting there and I'm, like, thinking about all of the things I want to do for my future. And a handful of those were, like, tiny home, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, I've always thought about tiny home. And a tiny home is in regulation size from 100 square feet to 400 square feet. Like, that is to be considered tiny home. Anything above that is out of that regulation size.
Yeah.
And so I'm, like, in this rabbit hole, deep, deep, deep. I'm looking at everything. I'm watching documentaries. I'm on YouTube. I'm like, yep, I know everything. You could ask me anything and I'd be like, I got it. I got details, all of it. And it just started to really pique my interest. But then you start thinking about how much, like, 100 square feet is, how much 400 square feet is. And that's the size of a very small apartment.
Yeah.
That's the size of, like, a studio apartment. And so you can't have all of your things. I have a room at this moment in my life that just is filled with stuff.
Yeah.
And it's filled with stuff that, like, I've acquired over years because it felt necessary. Everything that I had was just from being, like, a broke teenage to young 20s, and I just was taking it along with me because it felt necessary. But I'm not really getting rid of anything, right?
Because it's, like, your stuff. Yeah.
It's just my
like,
stuff.
Yeah. And, like, you, like, put yourself into your stuff, kind of.
Yeah, and I'm acquiring things. And when you have roommates, like, you make sure that you have your things, but you also, like, I don't know, it's weird because, like, I wouldn't have furniture, but I would, you know, like, I'm not gonna have, like, a full couch to share with somebody because my old roommate did. Then I would just take pride in having all of my other things. And then I'm, like, looking around, I'm like, I don't even really enjoy a lot of this stuff. It's just there to support my life.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I wasn't really at the point in my life where I could just swap those out easily because things are expensive and I don't really feel like I'm a consumer at heart.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
can I interrupt just to tell y'all that I took Erica to IKEA and buying something new made her a little anxious because she's so used to not buying new. She's like really good at not being a consumer. I will say that.
It was like pulling teeth for me to get a new lamp, and I needed one, and I've been trying to thrift one for freaking so long. It's like overwhelming, and I finally see one that I like, and I'm like, should I get it? And she's like, Erica, it's a lamp for your house.
Get the lamp.
Get the light so that you can feel comfortable in your room, and that's just kind of like the way that I've thought
That's
for a
what
long
your brain
time.
works, yeah.
Exactly. But at the time, Marie Kondo is also getting really, really popular. And again, we're all locked in our homes and we're like, have you seen that documentary? So I finally
I
break.
love Marie Kondo.
I love her. She is so great.
Maybe we should have her on the podcast someday.
Oh God.
I'm putting this out into the universe.
We're putting this is like that's a pipe dream. But she really goes in deeply about showing appreciation for your things. A lot of us are consumers. And so I'm stuck in my home and I'm like thinking about all the things I have. And again, I'm in this deep rabbit hole of what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, zoning for tiny homes in not only this city, but in Michigan in general is very tough to find.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah. And it's really just hard. You have to be very sure about your plans and everything. And I just like wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
I was very much into van life.
Ah.
And so I'm going through and you know, she has the best mindset on how to go through your things and really take them not take them for granted. So like you hold something and decide whether or not it's brought value to you. And then you say yes or no and appreciation for it. She has a docuseries that everybody who wants to try to rid themselves of like being chained to their things. And then she also has 4 books. So I watched this and I'm like, wow, you know, I really should get rid of some of my things. I'm getting into this idea of van life. It's even smaller than a tiny home. You really can't take anything with you. And so I just started going through all of my stuff because I committed to living in a camper for the summer. So I purchased a camper and a way to tow it. And again, I'm going to note that I had privilege to do this in this moment of my life. But I also decided, like, I don't want to keep paying rent in a place that, like, is just going to fill up with stuff and not fulfill dreams and my wants and my needs. And so I wanted my wants to be experience-based.
Yeah.
So I donated everything. Like, everything I had. I had donated my car, which was a piece, right? Like I think I told the
POS, if you
will. I think I told the person, like, not sure how long this car is gonna last you, but like it's gotten me through the past like year and a half or 2 years, and it was a POS when I bought it. Yeah, I donated my car. I donated my awesome, huge Tempur-Pedic bed. Oh my goodness! I hope you're still using it out there. I donated all of my clothes except for what I could carry with me in my Jeep. All belongings except for sentimental. So this is everything. Kitchen items that couldn't fit in my camper and like wasn't going to use. I mean, and just doing that was really freeing. And I
would love to experience something like that someday.
It's kind of difficult, but also like you get into this rhythm, right? Where you're deciding like what is necessary in my life. And it's so much more than you can carry. And if I were to throw a backpack on and go to the beach today, I would still have more than I can carry with me.
Right.
You know, and that's just the mindset that we have at all times. And so I decided to really lean into that life. And I used assistance from people like Marie Kondo. There's also a documentary that I watched. And right before I bring them up, I will say that these people are living in privilege. It's Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus. They are the founders of the Minimalist podcast. They also have a New York Times bestseller book and a documentary based on
I think
their
they're all
experience.
called minimalism, right?
So the it's the Minimalist podcast.
Okay.
And then I'm not sure what the book is called, but it might be called Minimalism. And then the documentary is, and that can be found on Netflix, I believe. But it's just really good examples. I think they're a bit more abrasive, but those are ways that I kind of helped formed my mindset around what being a minimalist is.
Yeah.
And so a minimalist is just somebody who lives only needs based. Before you purchase something, you're going to decide whether or not you truly need it. Before you decide what your needs are, you kind of have to evaluate why you have certain needs. And then I think a really great way to tie it into climate is, one, you're not going to just acquire things to acquire them.
Yeah.
But
like
also,
it just stops like that mindless, just like, oh, that's nice, I'm going to buy it.
Yes.
It's like almost like you can't appreciate it without buying it.
You can't appreciate it without buying it. You can't appreciate what you have at home if you're going to continue.
That's true,
you know, when you're buried under your things, you don't really...
Things lose their specialness if you have too many of them.
Absolutely. And so since then, I'm going to be real, since then, this was 3 years ago, I have acquired more in my life, right? I have an apartment, so I'm no longer living out of a camper, which I only did for a handful of months.
But the fact that you were even able to do that, though, I feel like almost everybody else that I know would just be like, oh, just put this stuff in storage.
It just didn't feel right. Like, am I going to let things collect dust?
Yeah.
I didn't really want to come back to things.
Yeah. But I feel like you kind of really disperse things, like not just to like thrift stores, I'm assuming, but also like amongst your community, right?
Oh, 100%. People got my things first, and then places got my things. And I still to this day have a hard time with the amount of things that I do have or acquiring things.
Funnily enough, one of our mutual friends came over to Erica's, and they commented that Erica has maybe two little things.
I would not consider myself a minimalist, right? And there are a lot of things I allow for myself to be completely outside of minimalism with. And I think that's a huge part that we have to realize. You don't have to shift your entire lifestyle.
No.
Because that would make you miserable. Like if you love shoes, and you need to have options for shoes, and you're going to care for them, and you're going to
treasure them,
have your shoes. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you can have your shoes and your trinkets, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean you can have shoes in every single book you want, and every single movie you want, and you can't, have every single other item that you want. I think it's all about finding a balance, and then it's also about deciding what you really what really brings you happiness. And I can personally say that there isn't really anything like experiences. And when you separate yourself from your things, you don't have to clean them as much. You don't have to tend to them. You don't have to maintain them. When you buy things that are really of value, you don't have to spend time replacing them. And you can spend time with your people. You can spend time doing the things that you want to do or utilizing the objects that you have.
Right.
So I'm always going to remind us of ways that we can be minimalist beyond just saying the word and saying that's what you can do.
Yeah.
So be mindful of your purchases, of maybe where they come from or how many you're making. I like to purchase from thrift stores as much as I can. I've said this a million times. It also prevents me from
We've already established that Erica's a thrift queen.
But it stops me from if I decide if I need something, and the universe also just brings it into my life if I do. You can donate, because a lot of people thrift things that are donated, and it just is a way of recycling them. You can decide through seasons of what you're going to choose to keep and what you're not. A lot of minimalists will do things like share clothing or do clothing swaps.
Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah. I do want to have a clothing swap in my house sometime.
Or if you know somebody who's the same size as you, you could potentially borrow something from them. And then
more of a community-based approach to things and stuff.
Well, and then I would say to be mindful when you are making purchases that you're purchasing things that are not going to destroy our planet, right? So if you're going to buy a utensil at the store, consider buying maybe a wood one, or not buying one that's going to wear and tear quickly. Or
those cheap plastic ones that just melt when
I was going to say,
them.
I know they're more affordable at the moment, but how many of those are you going to go through, and what does that impact leave later?
And we're aware that it is expensive to be poor, and a lot of these things that we're saying may not be like accessible to everybody, but if you do have the means to do so, like it is worth making a little bit of extra effort.
Yeah, you save like time, energy, and money. And
so try to not aspire to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna say to not aspire to be successful, or maybe not aspire to be wealthy, but don't make the material aspect of it the end goal. You know.
Yeah. I think really to give credit to this conversation, it's so easy to get wrapped up in.
Mm-hmm.
When we have access to people's lives and we get to see the best parts of them.
Thanks, social media.
Social media makes us feel like we have to have a new outfit every day, the best cars. It makes us feel like we have to be building and constantly growing. Again, the change your home from this vibe to that vibe. Like for a long time it was farmhouse, and now that's out, and you got to be a hippie, and it's just like, it's exhausting.
But farmhouse chic has always rubbed me the wrong way.
Live, laugh, love. That's what I think about it.
Yeah, the distressed paint.
It's the distressed paint for me. No, but I think it's really hard to get outside of that. And so learning the facts and then making mindful decisions around the type of lifestyle that you want to live can be helpful. You don't have to call yourself a minimalist to be more of one. You don't have to call yourself an environmentalist to live a more environmentally friendly life.
Yeah, just be more intentional and thoughtful.
And I love Target. I'm just going to say it again.
It needs to be said. We hate Target, but also
they've learned our algorithm.
Dude, they got me figured the freak out. I hate it.
How do they have all of us figured out? If we're different people, they've figured out the algorithm of
branding, really. Yeah. Yikes.
So our call to action for the week will be to maybe find a way to de-brand yourself or potentially look into a brand or a certain thing that you're really, really like you've never looked into before. Just consider.
Yeah, some people do like no buy challenges where like for like a month you don't buy anything outside of like food really.
That would be so hard. That's tough. I don't want to keep telling us to start making different decisions to make a difference.
Because at the end of the day, it's the corporations that are overproducing it and then lumping their problem onto us that are the real problem.
But I do believe that if we shift our mindsets away from their ability to control them, we win.
Dude, I mean, like I'm like, slut for Aldi. And like Aldi always has such like this tank top that I'm wearing. Aldi. And it's like the most comfortable tank top I own, and I'm just like, and
you are the one person, if there's a tank top, you're buying it.
I'm buying it. And also, okay, can I tell you something?
Tell me.
I bought one of these tank tops at Aldi, and I was like, damn, I don't want to take this off. It's so comfortable. I went back and I bought another one.
Okay, but is it good quality?
It's made out of recycled plastic.
Did it fill your needs?
Yeah, because now I could wear a tank top more.
Was it within a budget?
Yeah, it was like $10.
Did it feel excess?
No.
There you go. Like that's literally the thought process you could go through.
Yeah.
This is filling a need. It's also something I want. I don't have an excess amount of these at home. I'm going to wear this. It's comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, clothes are a necessity.
Yeah. And I will say, like I mentioned before, that I was like very, very poor going through college. So a lot of the clothes that I had are from before college and they are falling apart. So I feel like I am in this really weird state of like semi-needful consumerism because I'm like, oh, this stuff is falling apart. Time to replace it. So I'm going through kind of like that phase of my life right now.
How about we encourage then to go from consumerism mindset to just needful consumerism.
Yeah.
So just go through when you're at the store next and you're going down an aisle and you see yourself pick something up, just go through that process. Like, is this filling a need? Is it adding to excess? Or is it something that's going to actually bring value to my life?
Yeah.
And if you save $5, buy me coffee. I'm just kidding.
Deal. Don't forget there's sustainable options out there for most things that you need. So if it's within your means, shop sustainable.
Share what you made a switch to or something you decided to get rid of. And keep being amazing.
I'll see you next time.
Peace.
Bye.